What's up, guys? Today we will start off with installation and configuration of a Citrix WEM in two nodes. A lot of people normally ask me, "What is Citrix WEM?" and why should I be deploying it in a Citrix environment? Well, I would tell you folks that Citrix WEM is one of the most powerful tools out there available, and it's literally underrated. Let me put it that way. And though customers normally have access to it, I hardly seen a lot of customers or people normally using it. It's free, especially for most of the enterprise and platinum customers that have a valid CSS agreement. And it's super impressive. If you have any specific application out there that consume a lot of memory and CPU, well, I would normally state which most of the modern apps in today's world normally do. This is the tool to normally be using. There are a lot of things that you can normally do with Vim. In short, Vim is just a resource management and a user personal management tool, and it's a must-have in every Citrix environment. I will quickly walk you through. Normally, Citrix Vim sits in the control layer, and it's a pretty simplified architecture by Citrix. If you have a look from the diagram, it's just divided into three main pieces. I would normally say. Firstly, is the infrastructure services, the Vim infrastructure services. That's one of the part which will be installing on both of our nodes in our lab. And then you have the administrative console, which is normally used to normally administer every single setting that you normally configure within the environment. And the third part is the WEM agent, which you normally would deploy on a VDA. It could be, a Windows 10, Windows 11 multi-session host, single session host, or even a physical box. Uh, so let's start off with our lab. I'm just going to minimize my window and let's get back to my Zen Center. So as you can see from the video, I've already created two WEM boxes. Again, standard Windows Server 2019 fully patched. And we got WEM O1 and O2. So today we'll be installing the 2311 version of WEM, which is the latest CR release. Especially with WEM, if you've got an LTSR deployment, it's preferable and recommended by Citrix to normally be using the current release rather than using the LTSR version. For Vim itself. So let's start off with installing the infrastructure services on Vim one. So I've already pre-downloaded it. So I'm just going to fire up the wizard. I'll accept the licensing term and click on install. As you can see that it's installing the prerequisite, which is .NET Framework 4.8. That's a prerequisite that's normally required for the infrastructure services. So it's just getting installed as we talk. I will also start the same process on the other box as well, which is my CVAD WMO2 box. I've already got the installer down there as well, and I'll be installing the infrastructure services and the console on both of these boxes. I'll pause the video for the time being, and I'll come back once the installation is complete. You can see from the video that the .NET 4.8 got installed on both of the boxes, Vemo 1 and O2. I've just restarted them, and I've just got up the wizard of infrastructure services on Vemo 1. I'm just going to click on Next, and I'm just going to leave the default path of the infrastructure services to be installed. I'll click on Next, and I'll click on Install. I'll run the same setup on the other node as well. Click on next. I'll leave the path as it is. Click on next and click on install. So hopefully this should normally get the infrastructure services installed on both of the nodes. So once it's installed, as you can see, it's completed on the node one. I'll click finish on there. It will pop up with the database management utility. So let's go ahead and start up the wizard of creating a WEM database. You would normally get a screen of the utility where you can either create one or you can upgrade depending on the deployment. As this is a fresh install, we'll go ahead and click on create database. I'll click on next. So the first box is asking me for the name of the SQL server. So we'll use our existing SQL server that we have already gone through our lab in the last few series, and we'll just give it a name. We'll call it Citrix WEM. So that's the name of the database. And as you can see, it automatically auto populates it and things that your data files and your log files are in the same direction. It's not that smart enough to normally auto pick up the data in the log directory. So we'll just log on to our SQL box and make sure the paths are right. So our data is on E. So we'll just copy that, go back to the WEM box, and do the same for the logs as well. Go back onto the WEM box, and we'll go ahead and click next. We'll use the integrated connection because this account of mine has got full permission for creating databases on the existing SQL server. I've also pre-populated and created a service account, which we'll normally be using. And the reason for using a service account is as we'll be load balancing these servers on an ADC, we normally require a service account. If we are going to go ahead and load balance, and in this stage we are, so yeah, we'll be using a service account. The next step that you can normally see, it's asking for an initial administrative group. So you also got to pre-populate and create an administrative groups. So you can just add any members that will normally be, administrators for Citrix WEM. I've already created one, so I'm just going to add that group in there. And I'm going to take on this option. This is the infrastructure service account. So this is the account that will be responsible for running the Citrix WEM services. And this specific account has got access on the web server, on the on the SQL server as well. I've also added the same service account as a onto the local admin and group as an administrator on both of the WEM nodes as well. Now, as you can see that there's one more option where it says set WUM user SQL user account password. Now, you would normally require this if you're going to be building up, a SQL server with an always on cluster or in a high availability mode. So you can tick that option and just create a password for it and click next. Now you can see that it's literally self-explanatory. It tells you what's the name of the instance of the SQL server, what's the name of the database, where the data files and the log files are going to be residing, who is the administrator of Citrix WEM, and what's the connectivity string. So we'll go ahead and click on Create Database. And at this stage, hopefully everything goes well. It should normally get the database called Citrix WEM created on our CVAD SQL or one box. I'll let this process run. It shouldn't take that long. It should be pretty quick. And hopefully we should get a message stating that the database is created. There you go. As you can see, the database is successfully created. I'll just click OK on that and click on finish. Just to validate it, I'll just go back on my CVAD SQL box and fire up my SQL console, and just to refresh. And under database, I should be able to see Citrix WEM database. There you go. So that looks all good to me. And in green, I'll go back on the WEM box. So the next part in here is we have to install the console, the management console on the same box as well. So I'll be going ahead and installing the management console on both of the nodes. It's pretty self-explanatory and easy wizard where you just click on next and finish off the installation. I'll just rinse and repeat the same thing on the Wemo 2 box as well. Now on the Wemo 2, after you install the infrastructure service, you do not have to launch the database management utility because you've already created a database, so it's already there. So which all we need to do is we just need to configure the infrastructure services, which I'll walk you through the process at the moment as well. So I'm just going to close that and I'll install the console, the management console on the second node as well. And once the console is created and installed, I'll jump back on Wemo 1. And I'm just going to minimize this console. I can close this and come out of this utility. Uh, Under Citrix, you should see an option saying WEM infrastructure service config. So this is the basic initial configuration that you'll normally do up here. So you fire up that option, and these are few parameters that you need to normally configure at the times. So we normally put in the same name of our SQL box, the instance name that we use to create the database. If you got a failover server instance, you can apply that as well. But in our case, as it's a lab environment, I've just got a single standalone. The name of the database, which is Citrix WEM. The next tab is network settings. So these are the ports that WEM normally uses to normally administrate. So the administration port, which is the console, is on 8284. So these are the default ports. The agent normally uses 8286, the monitoring 8287, and the cache data for sync is 8288. So we'll just leave it as default. We click on the advanced setting. I want to enable the Windows account impersonation, and I also want to make sure that I browse and create the service account that we created earlier and browse it here. And you also want to put in the password of the service account. We set that same WUM user SQL account password that we used earlier. I'll keep the service cache refresh delay to 15 minutes. I'll enable and tick mark enable performance tuning. I'll leave the values default. And in the configure analytics at this point, I will just click on do not help improve. The next tab on top is database maintenance. I'll click and enable that. I'll leave the default retention period in there. I mean, you can always tweak it depending on your criteria of your SQL, on your SQL databases or as per your SQL administrators. And the last bit is the licensing tab. In here, we just need to point it to our existing licensing server, which is our trial license server, which is. And once this is done, we click on the save configuration. And at this time, what happens is the broker service, which is installed, will be restarted. And we'll go ahead and click on yes. Service has just restarted. So I'm just going to minimize that window. Or we can just close that window. Click yes. I'm going to do exactly the same configuration on the other node as well. So I'll log on to Wemo2. Click on Citrix and click on the WEM infrastructure service configuration. We'll replicate exactly the same settings that we normally did on Wemo 1 uh, and put them on Wemo 2 as well. I'll enable the performance tuning and I'll click on do not help improve. I'll keep the database maintenance option as it is. And in the last part, which is the licensing, I'll just add in my licensing server and I'll save the configuration. So as soon as I click on save, you can see that the broker service will restart back again on the second node as well. The service has restarted. So I'm just going to go ahead and close the console. I'll jump back on CVAD WEM 01 and now I'll just open up the WEM administrative console and I'll try to connect to the local machine itself just to make sure that I'm able to log on to the console. So we just click on connect. And in the infrastructure server name at this point, we'll just put in the name of the FQDN name of the server itself. In the next series, which I'll normally be talking about, I'll be going ahead and load balancing both of these WEM boxes on NetScalers. So, but at this point, I just want to make sure that I'm able to log on, and you can see that we are successfully logged on to the default site. Uh, That's it. In the next series, we will start off with load balancing Citrix WEM on a NetScaler. Thank you everyone for watching this video. Hasta la vista from Citrix Sage. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.